I've decided, for no apparent reason, that I need a pirate shirt by the end of the day. A test. It's a little rough, but it'll do. Energy level so far for sewing, holding up pretty well. Energy level for filming is admittedly running a little bit low. Shannon's getting sassy as the sun goes down. Which, given the time deadline, is not a good idea, but given the aesthetic, it's a great idea. Good morning, friends, and I do mean morning because it is in the very wee hours here in Montreal. That's why I'm over here on this half of the sewing studio in an attempt to not bother my roommates at this early hour, because I woke up with a craving, an itch that needs to be scratched, and that itch is in the form of a pirate shirt. So I've decided, for no apparent reason, that I need a pirate shirt by the end of the day. So that is the time frame we're working with, 24 hours to make a pirate shirt. That's the plan. Here is the fabric. It is this lovely white sheet that I got at a local thrift store for just over $5. It is a gorgeous tight weave cotton and more than enough fabric to make a pirate shirt. So I'm going to get started this morning by throwing this in the wash, seeing if we can get some of the stains out of it. And then while that is washing and drying, head on over to the other side of the room and figure out what size all these pattern pieces need to be, because I have never, in fact, actually made a pirate shirt. So my goal on this is to use as many free, cheap, and or thrifted resources as possible, and that includes the patterning and the instructions. So to start drafting the pattern, I'll be using Oralin's free YouTube tutorial that should walk me through taking the measurements and making a pattern. Alright, so I've got all of my measurements all taken down. That was pretty straightforward, and when people say that these garments are basically just a series of rectangles, they really aren't kidding. It literally is a bunch of squares and rectangles. So now that I've got that all taken care of, I just need to wait for my fabric to come out of the dryer. So I think I'm gonna go finish my cup of coffee, maybe wake up a little bit, do my hair, and I'll meet you back here in a second with some freshly laundered fabric. Alright, the fabric is out of the dryer and ready to go, and I've got my measurements here, so let's just start tearing some squares out. And yes, I do in fact mean tearing. This is pretty good quality fabric with a nice tight weave, and I'm just cutting out squares and rectangles, so I'm thinking I should just be able to leave myself a slightly larger seam allowance than normal to cover any frayed edges, and then just tear this into shapes. What do we think? Let's give it a go, because we are on a tight deadline here, people. A test. That'll do. That'll do. It's a little rough, but it'll do. So now all my pieces are cut out and ready to go, and it's time to decide which step I'd like to do first. Now, different sources will tell you different places to start. I'm just gonna go with the one that makes the most sense to me, and that is cutting a hole for my head. Well, it fits. That's a very good sign. So now the next step is going to be to finish off these front edges here, and that means this might be a good time to talk about how exactly I want to tackle this project. Because here's the thing, the goal is not just to whip together a pirate shirt in 24 hours, it's also to have a finished garment that is comfortable and that looks really good and that I really had fun making. And here's the thing, there are certain types of hand sewing that I really enjoy, and there are other types of hand sewing that I cannot stand. For example, anything that is simply a construction seam drives me off the walls. I do not enjoy it whatsoever. Things like side seams, long shoulder seams, anything that is just a long stretch of sewing two pieces of fabric together, I cannot stand it. So I will be doing that on the machine. What I do absolutely love doing is felling things down, hemming shirts, all that kind of stuff I really enjoy. And the good news is that means that my most enjoyable sewing experience is also fairly expedient because I can use the machine to do those long runs of sewing that I don't particularly like doing by hand, and then I can save all of my energy and finger skin to do the felling down, and that's also going to give it that nice little hand finished look on the finished garment. So that, I think it's gonna be a perfect combination of things for me, and it's gonna be a very enjoyable sewing experience, which, let's not forget, that is the main point, right? So it's all sewn and looking super good. Very happy with how that turned out. There is still a little something that needs to happen right there. We got to put some reinforcement in on that because otherwise it'll, you know, tear open very easily, but that's gonna wait till the very end because if I'm running tight on time, which I suspect I will be, I'm happy to call this shirt done even if there's no reinforcement in there. So let's move right along to the next part, which is going to be putting some gussets right in that little area. Now there's about a million different ways that I've found videos online telling me how to do this, so I think I'm just gonna wing it. I'm not sure what technique I'm gonna use, but we're gonna find out. In the end, I decided the best method for me was going to be to iron under all four edges of my gusset first. Then I could sew it down to the outside of the shirt, which made it pretty easy to then fold it under and whip it down to the inside. Can we just take a second to admire how well these gussets turned out?
Blimey!
I'm super pleased with how they went in, and honestly they weren't even that fiddly. I don't know if it's because I was doing it all by hand, so I had a lot of control over their placement and everything, but I am super happy with how it turned out. And the next step is going to be to put on a collar, which should be fairly straightforward, and we are making pretty good time here, but that doesn't mean that we can dawdle, so let's keep it moving. A true pirate loves nothing more than a barrel full of rum and some crisp corners on their collar, which is why a second-hand knitting needle is an essential part of every pirate's kit. right, the color is in and looking very nice. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Now I think I'm just going to quickly sew up these side seams here before taking a snack break because I am starving and because I want to make sure I have full energy for tackling these sleeves. One, because sleeves, but also because I have some very fun things planned for them. So what is the plan for these sleeves? Honestly, you probably already know. It's probably in the thumbnail for this video. I want to do some smocking. Nothing too fancy or time consuming. We are still on a deadline here, but I thought it would be a nice fun way to deal with all of the gathers and volume in these very voluptuous sleeves. Plus, you know, it's a nice touch to set it apart from kind of all the other pirate shirts out there. This one's for a gentleman pirate, if you will. So I started out by drawing a grid because that's usually the first step in the smocking process. She says, having done this only one other time. But then I started to feel guilty because I'm using this fancy transparent ruler to make the grid, and even though this one cost me less than $1 at the thrift store, I do realize not everyone has one. So then I put my big brain on and realized that it's 2023 and there's probably a website that'll do this for you. And sure enough, I found gridsly.com where you can enter any size scale for your grid and it'll auto-generate a piece of grid paper for you. So if you don't have a fancy ruler, you can use the internet. And if you don't have a printer, then you can do it by hand. It'll just be a bit slower. Well, it may be a rather unconventional way to go about doing this. I'm not sure I've ever seen anybody else do it, but I really love it because it's very portable. It's not at all fragile. These gathers are held very firmly in place. And if I need to pack this up, I just fold it up, throw it in a bag, bim, bam, boom. Can take it on the road with me. Will not be taking this on the road with me because I have to wrap it up by the end of the day. So let's get started with the actual smocking. All right, the first one is done and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It looks pretty good. I didn't have a plan for the pattern, just kind of jumped in and made something up as I went along, which it looks pretty good considering, although it does mean that I have a couple extra gathers over here that I ended up not needing in order to like make the pattern look good, but that's fine. We're gonna take out these gathering threads and then they should just disappear into nothingness. Should be okay. So what do you say? Should we take out these gathers and see how they look? This is always kind of the fun part. It's a little bit like magic. It's kind of like unwrapping the presents at Christmas, except you already kind of know what it looks like. We can reuse these threads for sleeve 2, so carefully taking them out and saving them, and there it is. Well, it does definitely look a whole lot better without all those gathering threads in there. On the back side, I've got lots of little threads hanging off that I do need to go in and tie off, but then I get to go repeat the whole process for sleeve number 2. Fortunately, I do feel like I learned a lot of things on sleeve number 1, so the second one should go a little bit faster, be a little bit cleaner, and let's just cross our fingers that my energy holds up. So far, feeling pretty good, but there's still a long ways to go because then we gotta turn this rectangle of fabric into an actual sleeve with a cuff and some buttons, and I'm getting a headache just thinking about how much there is to do. So let's keep rolling. Let's not question the process. Sleeve number 2, here we come. Okay, so it is a bit after 4 o'clock. I have 2 gorgeous and fully smocked sleeves, but before I can take those sleeves any further, there is something absolutely crucial that needs to happen. Wait. I think there's something wrong with my corgi because she goes off every day at 4 o'clock. I can't find the snooze button, and I think the software is broken because I can't seem to reprogram her either. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? She needs some puppy food? Can I? Okay. Energy level so far for sewing, holding up pretty well. Energy level for filming is admittedly running a little bit low because normally I have turned the cameras off at this point in the day, and normally I'm not even don't start filming so early. So it's an experience, still having fun, but if I get sleepy in future clips, I'm sorry. I'm still having fun, the energy is running low. Ooh, don't get my greasy forehead on my white sleeve. Ugh. It's okay. It still looks okay. Everyone knows that good pirates don't screen their parents' calls, so when Mama Makes rang up, I answered, which definitely was an unexpected turn of events. I personally might have chosen another day for the chat, but I took advantage of the interruption to do some hand sewing. So that took a little bit longer than maybe would have been ideal, but it was not wasted time because I did do a bunch of hand sewing. Starting off with this, just stabilizing the bottom of that neck there. I think it looks really good. It kind of gives it that nice, like, authentic touch, if you will. Yeah, look at it. And then the next thing that I did was I finished off the edges of the sleeve where they need to go into the cuff. So those are turned under and stitched down. The rest of the edges are raw. I will fell them down later tonight if I have time, but these need to be done now because I have to put the cuff on here first. Then the only other thing that I did was run a couple lines of gathering stitches here like we talked about earlier. So now my sleeves are ready to go and ready to be set into the body of the, oh shit. So I just realized I probably actually want to put the cuffs on before setting in the sleeves because it's probably just going to be easier to put the cuffs on the sleeves when the sleeves aren't attached to the rest of the shirt. So that means I should go back to my sewing machine, run a couple more lines of gathering stitches on this end of the sleeve, which I did conveniently and on purpose cut out from the selvage. Because I always find that when you're setting cuffs on sleeves that there's just so many raw edges and threads hanging all over, especially with the gathering threads. It always drives me a little bit nuts. So I had the opportunity to cut these sleeves on the selvage, and I did. So I'm hoping that's going to make the cuff setting in process go a little bit smoother. So let's go do that right now. Put some cuffs on this baby, and then we can set in the other end. Boop. Also, despite having an entire sheet to cut this shirt out of, I did somehow still manage to cut my cuff out of one of the stained sections. So instead of going back and cutting a new cuff, which seemed a bit wasteful to me, I just left myself a giant note that this side of the cuff has to go on the inside of the shirt so that the clean, unstained top portion can be the part that shows on the outside. I don't know, it seemed kind of ridiculous on the one hand, but it also seemed kind of ridiculous to waste more yardage and cut a new piece when I could just put the stain on the inside of the shirt. So by now the cuffs are all sewn on to the sleeves, at least on the inside, and I made the rather questionable decision, just given the time frame, to sew the cuffs to the inside by machine so that I can sew them to the outside by hand, which, given the time deadline, is not a good idea, but given the aesthetic, it's a great idea. So here's where we're at. There's my stain. There's the inside, excuse me, of the sleeve, and then looking at the outside, that's what I'm gonna do next. If you've been here a bit, if you find that you keep clicking on my videos and you've watched a few of them, please consider subscribing. We are so close to 50K subscribers here, and while I know it might not change too much for you in your life, it really helps me on my end. So if you're not subscribed, please consider giving that button a little click. Good morning, friends. First of all, let me just say, I don't think I've tried to be that productive that late at night since, I don't know, high school. But to answer the burning question on everyone's minds, did I finish the shirt? The answer is almost, maybe, yes, I thought so, but then no. So what happened was I stayed up so late working on that, getting every last little bit of hand stitching done, and I was feeling so proud of myself. And then at about 11:15, right as I was walking inside, I realized there was one thing I had forgotten: the buttonholes. And I was not about to ruin a full day's work by trying to do some buttonholes at almost midnight. So that is what we're gonna do today. We're gonna put some last buttonholes on, finishing touches, and then y'all can see how this turned out. Also, yes, I do realize that doing these buttonholes by machine kind of goes against the whole handworked vibe aesthetic thing I've got going on in the rest of this project, but if we're being completely honest, my handworked buttonholes look like hot garbage, and I probably need an intervention for that at some point. But for now, we're just gonna do it by machine, and it's gonna be okay. So how did it turn out? Well, I will let you be the judge of that in a second, but let me bias your opinion by telling you that I am thrilled with how it turned out and essentially managed to do it in 24 hours. The smocking was definitely a challenge given the time crunch, and not pre-washing the fabric until the day of definitely cost me a good hour or so, but we got it done, and I at least am happy considering it essentially a 24-hour make. If you'd like more Shannon makes, like monthly vlogs, early and ad-free access to all videos, and extended editions or blooper versions of others, you can head on over to my Patreon and become a monthly supporter. My patrons keep me going, they help me pay the bills, and I am so glad for all their support. But without further ado, let's jump to the final reveal. If you'd like more jaunty pirate-themed sewing content, as well as one of my favorite reveals of all time, check this one out next. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!